Hi there. Welcome to my action research project. Before I tell you about my project, you need to know a little bit about the background information of my classroom. I teach a self-contained sixth grade classroom in San Jose, California. What that means is that I teach all content areas and the kids don't switch classes as they would in a more traditional middle school. I have an extremely small class size, only 20 students total. Our school follows a Reggio Emilia philosophy. Now that philosophy came out of Italy roughly at the same time as Montessori and also in the same area. Reggio Emilia is very child-led in terms of how we present the curriculum. My school does not put a lot of stock in standardized test scores. We don't use textbooks. We roughly follow the California framework for curriculum, but we are not strict at all about it. The students call us by our first name. It is also a parent participation school. So at any given time, I might have between 2 and 4 parent volunteers working at the classroom. I utilize those parents to run small groups and to do breakout activities, which is really helpful because a lot of our curriculum is project-based. So, for example, when we're studying Egypt, we might decide to make a life-size sarcophagus, or if we are studying ancient Mesopotamia, the kids might read the Code of Hammurabi and then as a class create their own code, kind of based off Mesopotamian laws. We don't give any homework or any letter grades. The two ways that we assess our students is through long form narratives and through the use of a portfolio that travels with them from year to year. So when a student starts out in kindergarten, they'll have an empty portfolio, but by the time they leave in 8th grade, the portfolio will have a record of their work for the last 9 years. The makeup of my class is 6 Asian students, 3 Hispanic, and 11 Caucasian. There is a balance of 11 girls and 9 boys in my class. My school tends to attract a lot of non-typical learners, mostly because of our child-led philosophy. It works for them and for their families. So in my class alone, I have 3 students with autism, 2 with ADHD, 2 with dyslexia, and 1 with severe anxiety. Now, the problem in my classroom is that because we have so many non-typical learners, and because we don't do the traditional school method of homework and worksheets, disorganization and late work is common. Especially in the earlier grades, we don't give letter grades. And so sometimes the kids have a hard time finding the motivation to get work turned in on time or done well. As a result, my research question was, what attitudes are associated with students' ability to plan and prioritize their schoolwork? Because I do have a number of students who are able to successfully do this. And so when thinking about my action research project, I wanted to understand what the difference was between those students who were already organized in getting things turned in on time and the students who struggle. There were 2 ways that I collected data for this research question. I used a Likert scale, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and I looked at qualitative data. What I did for this was I collected journal entries, which I will also show you an example of. So I created a questionnaire that focused on students' attitudes regarding school, their assignments, and learning. Questions 1 and 2 look at the students' feelings about school, whether they like school, whether they enjoy it. The majority of the students that I polled stated that they enjoy school and learning always or often, with only a few students stating that they enjoy school and learning only sometimes or rarely. There are 4 questions that ask about a student's ability to organize and prioritize their work. Those results showed me that about 80% of my students stated that they are able to organize and prioritize their work, with 90% reporting they complete their work on time. I also asked about the students' beliefs about their ability to learn. 70% reported that they easily learn new things, while just under 60% stated that when things are challenging, they keep trying. From this survey, I learned that my students generally have a positive attitude towards school and learning. They feel confident in their ability to use the organizational tools, but they struggle in persevering when work is challenging. So right here you can see the 10 questions that I asked on my Likert scale and the various scores. And then I put it into a bar graph that you can see here. And you can see that generally speaking, the students enjoy learning. They enjoy coming to school almost always or often. The one question that was a little less balanced was the I can learn new things easily. With I know how to make a plan, how to complete my assignments, also an area of need. Now, here's some example of the journals that I wrote, that I had the students write. So over a week, the students were asked to write on 3 different topics: organization, motivation, and how they deal with challenge. I collected 60 journal entries total from 20 different students. The entries were anonymous. The 3 prompts that I gave my students were: do you consider yourself to be an organized person? Why or why not? Do you learn things easily? If something is challenging, what do you do? And what motivates you to do well in school? What does doing well in school mean to you? I went through each journal and highlighted the information relevant to the study. I used a spreadsheet to organize my data. Each response was grouped into broad categories. After all the responses were logged and coded, I went back and refined my groups into subcategories. Finally, I looked at the responses and identified common themes within the data. For example, when looking at the data for the question, what motivates you? My initial categories were positive motivators, rewards, and negative motivators, punishments. When looking at the data a second time, I grouped the responses as follows: people, parents and teachers; punishments, loss of privileges; future thinking, college, jobs, earning money; and intrinsic factors, love of learning. So here you can see how I coded the question, what motivates you? And you can see that a lot of students cited that their parents motivated them. In particular, they wanted to do well for their parents. You can see that rewards were very important to my students: Xbox, privileges, freedoms, allowance, acknowledgement. You can see that a number of them cited future rewards as a reason to do well in school. College, they want to go to Stanford, they want to be a doctor; good job, money, more choices in the future. When looking at what doing well means, they understood that in order to do well at school, they had to get their work in on time, be organized, be responsible. They also cited negative examples of what doing well means: not being distracted, being on task, not in trouble, listening to the teacher, and such. Here is my other 2 breakdowns of the other 2 journal entries that I collected. So if you could learn easily or not. A lot of the kids said, well, it depends. I'm only able to do it if we're studying this. I'm good at math. I'm good at language arts. Sports is very easy for me. I pulled out anything that spoke to me about growth mindset or fixed mindset. Kids who would say things like, I always try my best, doing something is better than nothing, I adapt, sometimes I just practice. I also noticed that some kids gave me really strong indicators that they were operating from a fixed mindset. Why try? I need a new brain. I give up when it's hard. I like to learn, but I get discouraged. And the kids who cited growth mindset phrases, were also able to give me specific strategies that they used when something was challenging. I reread it, I simplify, I look again, I connect it to previous learning, or I just keep practicing. Down here is the results from the journal entry about organization. And what you can see here is that the students understand the benefits of being organized, and they have pretty strong opinions about whether or not they are organized people. So the common themes that I found within my research was that extrinsic motivation is extremely common in middle school students. No surprise there. Students who have a growth mindset can cite specific learning strategies that they use. And students who consider themselves organized also have specific organizational strategies. When looking at the literature review, there were two areas in particular that I was focusing on. The first was executive functioning skills. Now, normally when you talk about executive functioning skills, you're talking about non-neurotypical students. In this case, I'm looking at students' ability to plan, prioritize, and organize their work, 3 of the 8 main executive functioning skills. Typically, kids with spectrum disorder and those with learning disabilities have demonstrated that they really benefit from explicit instruction in terms of executive functioning skills. However, non-neurotypical students are not the only ones who can benefit. Because the adolescent brain is changing so quickly, most middle school students struggle with these skills at some point in their academic career. I also looked at growth mindset. Growth mindset was a theory put forth by Carol Dweck in the 1990s. It's also the basis for the theoretical framework for my study. Carol Dweck says that those who believe that their intelligence is fixed begin having overriding concerns about looking smart and begin to sacrifice learning opportunities when there's a threat of exposing their deficiencies. Those who are led to believe that their intelligence is malleable begin to take on challenging learning tasks and take advantage of the skill improvement opportunities that come their way. So just because a student currently has a fixed mindset does not mean that they cannot develop one through repeated practice, praising effort and not intellect, and conducting interventions that will help them to develop it. So to my action plan. It has 3 parts. Explicit instruction in the use of organizational tools. So the way that I set this up is that the students are provided with specific tools and explicit instruction in how to use them effectively. So this is how I want you to use your binder. This is what's going to be stored in your box. This is how we're going to keep our cubbies organized. Students will also be provided with an organizational checklist that they can refer to at any time and given class time each week devoted to maintaining their organizational tools. I will also be using a growth mindset curriculum created by Carol Dweck and her team at Stanford. The students will learn specific strategies that they can use when they're faced with something that's very difficult for them. And our class will develop a common language that we can use when something is hard. So for example, instead of a student saying, I can't do this, we'll have them rephrase it and say, I need to try another way to solve this. We'll also use carefully chosen rewards. Now, rewards are not my favorite thing to use in the classroom, but those kids who need a little extra incentive will get that to help them complete their work and stay organized. So the way that I will be assessing this is that I will be looking at their organization before and after the intervention takes place. I will assign each student a code 1 through 5 that reflects their level of organization and look for improvements. So 1 would be highly unorganized, papers all over the place, no sort of order, no use of planners, no attempts to organize, and 5 would be highly organized. Things are in their place, the binders and the tools are being used appropriately. Students who increase their level of organization or maintain a level of 3 or higher will receive a Hazen dollar, which we call a holla in my room, which they can be used to buy extra privileges. In order to measure the growth mindset curriculum, I will administer the mindset assessment profile from Carol Dweck to my students before and after the unit. That's my action plan. I hope you like it.